Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, our lead solutions engineer, along with Sarah Mitchell, who's in charge of our documentation department. Today, Dion will be going over a quick demonstration of a couple of new things from the new release of Alpha Anywhere. And he's also here to answer your questions, as are we all. So you can submit those questions by typing them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. Hello, Dion. Are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. And it's finally spring up here in New England. I know it gets warmer a little bit in Texas, except when all of a sudden it's -50 like 3 weeks ago. But
yeah, it's not bad actually.
It's pretty nice up here in the northern hemisphere, I'd say, in general. So yeah,
it's a chillier spring. Yeah, it's but hey, it's interesting as spring break's over, so go back to work. Next stop summer.
How was your spring break, by the way?
It was fabulous. The kids had a great time. Did the dolphin thing, which was just amazing. I mean, their smiles could light up the world. It was just so cool to see them doing that. So we were lucky enough to be able to go do something like that, and the girls just had an amazing time. So
fantastic.
Really, but Brady and Raren, I mean, so cool stuff going on. Man, I got to catch up. Checked it out. Sarah did a phenomenal job. I want to say thank you so much. She always knocks it out of the park, makes it hard for me to kind of follow that. The old adage is never follow a dog, or was it a dog or a magician?
Or children. Children.
Yeah, that's it. Dog or children. You can't over that. So, and they should just add.
Probably a magician though too. I think that's a good one. That's a third.
A good magician.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a bad magician, then it's fine. Yeah.
But they should now change that to dogs, children, and Sarah. Because she's
never follow Sarah. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, again, thank you everybody for joining us. My name is Dion McCormick, and we're very excited about having you with us. Again, I hope some people may actually be doing the spring break right now, and so if you are, have fun. You're watching this after you come back. If not, welcome back from spring break, and a lot of cool stuff you can use now. The breaking news, and I know Sarah has already talked about this, but I wanted to touch base on this, is the new release of Alpha. And it's actually been a little while since we've got an Alpha release. And actually, there's two things about this. One is some amazing new capabilities, things we have already covered between now and then, but also we've also done some, there's some things I didn't even know were in there that are new, which is just really exciting. And we're going to be covering those in the next couple of weeks. There's one feature that's been in there, in the pre-release form. And I want to kind of show you that one because it's really handy when you're working with list controls. I'm going to be going over that today. But also there's a really cool new feature that has to do, we're going to be covering more in there, things they slipped in I didn't know. The other thing I've noticed so far is that we're finding that this release is pretty stable. It's, my experiences, and I'm speaking for myself, is looking pretty good. It really has been solid. I haven't seen a lot of weird things. I think it was in gestation for long enough that it kind of got beat up and got, a lot of little things got taken care of. So it's a very stable release, and I'm very excited about it, and excited about the complete set of great features that are built into it. So what I want to do today is focus on a cool new feature here that is pretty exciting, and it's really handy in list controls, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment. I need to do a quick mic adjustment, so give me about 20 seconds. Is that okay? I know dead air is there.
Go for it.
And also, is my screen coming through okay?
Yeah, it
great.
Sure
Thank
is.
you. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. So
you did it in 16 seconds. I knew you could do it. Terrific.
I know. And remember, what's great is, for this new release, you can go in here and, we have built into our universal installer is this capability to download this Plus, I don't wonder if we have actually even a new pre-release. I'm surely didn't nightly build. I bet we do. But you can do it right from there. The nice thing is it manages the installation process, puts it into the right location. So you can technically run multiple releases on one development environment. It's up to you how you want to do from there. And that's what it's doing. Oh, look, it actually called and got the latest updates. And so pretty exciting amounts from there. So I downloaded that and installed it. Here are the release notes. I'm going to go ahead and copy those and put them into our chat window, just so you can go look at it there. And if I scroll down, there's a lot of really, really cool stuff in there. But the one I'm going to focus on is called, where is it? Where is it? It's maybe a little farther. 2-state images. It's really a neat, basically you could do this before, but it was a manual process. And part of the challenge of that was, there we go. Part of the challenge with that is that you kind of had to do your own manual stuff. This takes a lot of that away from having to do it, and it's a very powerful function. So I'm going to go ahead and drive into my development environment. I'm going to go ahead and create a new UX. And again, this is a list control. So I'm going to focus on building a UX first. So we have a UX in there. Using this, I'm going to go ahead and put a panel layout. And yeah, I just like how fast you can do this stuff here. Panel card after, and let's go ahead and put a header in there just to make it look good. I'm gonna go ahead and just do a regular text box for now. We could use a control bar. And there's that neat new feature, remember, that you can connect list controls right to control bars. So when things are selected, we covered that a couple weeks ago, and that was cool, and that works really nicely. So you see all these little things are coming together to make it just much easier to create compelling interfaces. So with that, we'll go ahead and to state image demo. Come on, there we go. Okay, so to use this, it is a feature inside the list control. So I'm going to go ahead and create a list control. So add my control, put my list control here. Again, starting to use this add control. I used to always dig because I was so used to it. It's interesting how your pattern memory gets locked in. You tend to do those things. So go in here. And I'm going to go ahead and use the quick setup genie just to connect it to, oh, I haven't created my connection string. Oh, you know what? I know why. Because I don't need to use a connection string. I'll just use static data for today. This is really handy, by the way, is I'm just going to go ahead and call this list to state. If you're kind of playing around, there's a couple things you can do. Is you can obviously connect a list control to a SQL data source, but often when you're just kind of experimenting with things, it's really nice to be able to go in and just use static data. And that way it just works independently, you give it to people. So I'm going to select static. I'm going to go in here and notice I could start typing the data, but down here in the left-hand corner, we have something called the sample data. And sample data is a whole bunch of nice, simple and complex data that is available for you to put into your thing. So if you want to experiment with stuff, you don't have to go out and manually create all this stuff or connect it to a database and do those pieces there. So in this case, I'm going to select a very simple name and addresses. But you notice we have things like that sales pipeline for the Kanban, nested lists, hierarchical data, all these kind of rich things to play around with. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, click OK. And now I have my list data in here. And you'll notice it's using the pipe character to delineate each column. We have 4 columns of data there. Note this could be JSON data. It accepts both types. But in our case, we're going to go ahead and do that and use that from there. So I'm just going to click OK. Now, when we go into our fields, you'll notice that it's read that static data, and we already have that information in it. And then I can go into my list layout and go ahead and put in my list layout and put those things on it and click OK. Now, obviously, this is really not for, you could do some editing, but it's really just for more static data and handy pieces there. So I'll save that. And the last thing I'm going to do is remember when I put a list control in a panel card, I can click over here on fill container, fill container. So I can go into working preview. And in a moment, you'll see we have a list that has those static data, each one put in a separate column. Got my little header here. You'll notice it's using out of the gate a mobile user interface sort of template, although I could make that look different with the styling. So a common use case, actually, let me get rid of this here. There we go. A common use case is a situation where I want to have sort of like a status button on my list. So a check mark or some other kind of image that designates something. And I want to be able to actually treat that in terms of the ability to click on it and have something happen. So maybe I'm showing a list of items like, let's take an example here. Let's say this is a list of employees in my mega corporation. And I want to be able to display what their status is and be able to change that. So what I want to do is have some graphical indicator that shows the state of that person. And it's a two-state. They're either in or out. So this is a simplistic two-state thing. So I want to show that image here. So we've had the ability, and I'm going to go ahead and go back into the list control, go to the fields. We've always had the ability to add different things to a list control besides the data elements. Dynamic images, which are really handy, static images, which is a fairly newer item, but things like button, hyperlinks, custom, even a cool menu where you can actually click on a menu and have it do a little drop down and take action. We've shown that before. That's really cool. It really condenses the user interface really effectively. But I'm going to look at static image. I'm just going to call it static image, or yeah, let's call that for now. Okay. So I'm going to go into the image name here. And I can pick any type of image, but I'm going to use an SVG image. And I could select an image here. Let's just go ahead and grab that. Click OK, puts in that there. Now I've added my new column, and I can do things. I can have on-click events. I can show and hide that based on information, etc. But I need to actually display that. So remember, whenever you add an item here, you're adding it into the list control as part of the universe. And there's going to be one of those per every row is essentially how it looks. But we need to actually show that to the user. And by the way, you don't have to have everything shown to the user. You can create elements that don't show to the user. And those items can be what I would consider conditional. Sometimes they show this, sometimes they don't. So I'm going to go over to my list layout, and you're going to notice I have 4 columns here. And I have one right here called static image, which is my new static image. So I'm going to move it over there. And I'm going to put it as the first image here. Go and click OK. Now I can go in here, do a working preview. And you notice now my static image shows right here. And that's handy. You know, now I can have this nice little image column, which has some data. Now, there is a cool thing called the dynamic image where this image can look at other data fields and then present itself in a specific way, meaning, you know, based on the value of another column, I can say, show this image, like, are they in, out, et cetera, from there. And, you know, we can click on these images. I can click on an image, and what would happen is when I click on that, it would trigger the on-click event for that particular control. And then I could then open up a UX or navigate or do something like that. But I often want an indicator of my interaction. You know, a good user interface paradigm is when you click on something, there's some indicator that that click performs something. Like if I click on a row, notice that it moves the blue right here. So that gives me an indicator that something occurred, that my request was accepted and acted upon. And that's user interface design. It's just, you know, telling the user. Otherwise, if I clicked on something and I didn't see anything change, I might get confused, even though underneath the covers, it actually did select that row or do other things like that. Now I want to extend that when I click on an image, I want it to change so that they know they've done something there. So let's go ahead and go in. I'm going to go back into my list control. And we go to fields. We'll go back to mine. And again, as I mentioned, we could have a dynamic image, and then you could behind the scenes be managing this and flipping them back and forth because it can all be done client side. But that's a lot of work. And we don't want you to do a lot of work. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to static image, and you'll see now there is a new two-state image button right here. So I'm going to go ahead and change this image. Actually, I'll leave that for now. Let's go ahead and just enable two-step button. Okay, so I'm going to go back into this image right here, and I've got it as a little mortarboard, or, you know, when you graduate. So
That's it.
Yep. So I'm going to use the power. So I'm going to go ahead and select the power indicator because it has a nice analog or on-off kind of scenario. It's nice looking. And you'll notice that a lot of our SVG icons have kind of point counterpoint. But like if I go checkbox, you'll notice we have one, sort of yin and yang and good and evil and all that kind of stuff there. So yeah, you can decide how to do that.
Imperials and rebels, maybe that kind of
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Luke, Dave, I'm your father.
It's not
funny.
true.
Funny, not funny. Yeah, I know. That's good. Good. Okay, so I've selected my image name as that power on feature. Now I can go down here to swapped image, and I can go here, and I can go to SVG icon, click select. So I like be doing normal. I'm going to go ahead and type in power, and I'm going to select the off button. So you notice it's showing me the little off button right here. Notice if I need to make any changes, I can actually go ahead and take these defaults, click here, and modify. This is a certain syntax where you can change colors and other things like that. Pretty handy stuff. But I'm just going to use the plain vanilla one there. And it hasn't been a long time, but I want to show people the flat dash icon. Maybe nope,
No dash.
flat.
Yeah, just flat icon, I think.
Okay. Yeah, this place is awesome. We've mentioned it before. We don't make any money from these guys, but they have this incredible amount of icons. So if you're making a industry specific icon, you can grab these and download them and have them. And you can see they have a wide range of different types and stuff, and they have different styles. They come in packs so that, for instance, they're color coded. Let's say you're doing something regarding social media. But even if you have more of an industrial kind of thing, like an application, let me see, one's cool. Like, let's say you're doing something regarding cloud computing. These people do phenomenal jobs where they create consistent structures for the SVG icons, and you can get them in PNG, JPEG, etc. And therefore, you can have a very consistent user interface. And it's called flaticon.com. Pricing is incredibly good. You couldn't spend time hiring people to draw this stuff. And again, very compelling looking stuff. So, and with that, there is instructions on our website on how to take a set of SVG icons and install them into your project or into your UX so that they will actually literally appear in your selector. So once you have it imported, it's just like selecting our default ones. It's really, really handy and really nice. I use that a lot. Okay, so we now have our sort of image A and image B. And you'll notice that I'm saying toggle on click and rotation direction. So we're going to explore that in a moment. So I'm going to click save. Now remember, I still have the ability to add a click event. So when I click on it, I can do something. So let's go ahead and show that. Okay, so you'll notice that when it shows up with the default, the first one I selected. But now notice when I click on it, what happens? Two things. One is it swaps the image out, but watch, and it may be hard to see. Wish I could expand this a little bit. But if you click on it, you'll notice that there's a really cool like fade effect. Let me see if I can get there. Notice how it kind of rotates and fades. Very cool, because it not only gives you that visual indicator that something, it's saying, yes, you have done something, but more importantly, it does it in a very elegant way. And I got to give the dev team credit. They spent time not just saying, well, I just want it on or off and do that. They said, hey, let's create something that's elegant, that's powerful, that really shows something, a little extra thought and a little care to your user interface. And guess what? As your developer, it doesn't cost you anything because it's already built into the tool. And as I was mentioning before, if I go back in and let's go to my field, I can adjust that. I can rotate it 90, 80, etc. I can also toggle it clicked. It can also toggle the image programmatically. Now, I have it clicked because I want to do it on a click event, but notice that you can do this programmatically, meaning you could have some other thing happen in the row and then tell it, oh, by the way, switch this image so it shows this thing. So maybe you're like entering data into a system, and as you enter each piece, you want to tell the user it's been accepted by virtue of this two-state image. So it allows you to do that. One important thing I want to note while I'm here, it's kind of a geeky piece. This on-click event is where you would then say insert your action JavaScript to take action when they click on it, to do other things that are necessary, etc. You could even just code your own JavaScript if you want from there. But there's another one here that I always like to show when I talk about these items in a list, and it's called stop event propagation. Okay. So what happens is when you click on a field, it propagates that click onwards, meaning first thing it's going to do is this thing's going to handle that click. So when I click on that static image in the list control, it says, oh, I've got this on click event. I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do. Great, which is what I want. That's the first primary thing I want to do. But if I leave this empty, it will on default propagate that click event to the list control itself, so the list control can do all its other stuff it normally does. So let's take an example of that. And I haven't tested this, but let's go this. So let's first look at the behavior when we have what's called event propagation. So notice when I click on a row, and I'm not clicking on the icon, I'm clicking on the row, you notice the list interprets that, oh, he wants to select the row. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this row and I'm going to highlight it for him or her so they see this information in there. And if I do that on the static image here with my to state, you'll notice something. It did two things. One is that it changed the image first. It actually, if I had had a script, it would have run that script, that on-click event. And then last but not least, it says, hey, here you go, list, by the way, I've handled this, here you go. I've done what I need to do. And it hands to the list who says, oh, okay, it's a click on this row. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that row and select it and tell the user there. So let's go in and let's go change this. And again, I haven't tested this, but let's see what happens here. I'm going to stop event propagation. Okay. There's an important caveat on there. I'll let you know in a minute, but which is very important. Shouldn't be. But now I'm going to go ahead and let's click on that one. Oh, it's still doing that. But I think that always highlights the row that's been selected from there. But other events that are triggered on the row, it won't propagate to those pieces. So it basically gives you a tool to say, I want to kind of stop stuff at a certain level, because after a while, you may have multiple behaviors built into your list control, and you want to be able to kind of manage when those behaviors are triggered.
So you can kind of tell it like, hey, most of the time when I click on this row, I want you to run, it lists have got an unclick event or an unselect event. I want
Correct.
you to do the thing. But when I'm clicking on the static image portion of it, just do the static image thing I tell you to do. Don't do the rest of it. Is that kind of the...
Exactly.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and appreciate that. So those kind of scenarios. And so the other thing about that I think is important too, and it's a caveat that's put in here. When I click here, notice it says the on tap event will not be stopped. So if you're on a mobile device and you tap, because of the way the tap event is manifested in the operating systems on Android and the different web browsers, et cetera, it doesn't from that standpoint. So something to be there. But the cool thing is you have the ability to change the swatched images. They don't have to be sort of mirror images of each other. It's a cool effect. You can change the rotation direction so it makes sense for that particular. Like, let's just do something kind of interesting. So let's grab just to kind of explain how this might work. Okay. So I've done a left arrow and I'm going to go here and I'm going to do a right arrow. So kind of a left-right kind of paradigm. I'm going to get rid of that and I'm going to leave toggle on click and rotation direction there. So I'll go here. Okay. And notice what it's doing. It's rotating from that standpoint. So it's a little more visual of what it's happening from there. Now, it's doing two things actually, which you don't see. It's actually rotating and fading through. So it's actually not just, you'll notice it doesn't just swap it. It looks like it's doing kind of a nice rotation, because what it's doing is fading the first icon out and fading the second one in a sequence to get that kind of movement that's involved with it. So when you play with it, you could come up with some really cool effects. So, let's say I wanted to do, that one makes a lot of sense because you're rotating it from left to right. Like, think of it as a dial. But let's say we do 180. Let's see what happens there. I wonder if that will even work. We'll see. Haven't tried this. That's kind of the fun part of this, is experimenting to see what you can do. But with these icons, you can do some, it's kind of similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe I didn't pick the best example, but you can change that rotation direction. You know, you can actually say none and it will just swap them out, kind of things there. So a lot of fun, very easy to implement, full featured. So you still have things like the ability to style it. You have the on-click event. You can change how it operates. You can show and hide it. So everything you are normally used to, but this new two-state image, it just allows you to add a little pizzazz to your fabulous user interface. So just really, really cool. And that's in the new release, and we'll open it up for questions. But man, there's a lot of stuff in there, some cool stuff we're going to be covering in a little bit, but wanted to see if there's any questions from there.
I don't see any questions on the two-state buttons, but let's see what we've got for other questions. So this is an interesting one. Is there a way to utilize the security framework in a viewbox to show or hide items in the viewbox depending on a user's permissions?
Gotcha. Okay. So let's go into UI. So let's go ahead and go down here and add a view box.
For those not fully familiar with the security framework, it's a built-in system that Alpha has that allows you to divide up your users into different roles. So you might have end users and supervisors and administrators. And in your interface, you can hide parts of your interface that should not be seen by people who don't have permissions to see it. For example, you might have a button that opens an administrative interface, but you don't want your end users to see that. And here where Dan is pointing, it's got security groups right there.
Yeah, but that's at a like a club level, you know, like
exactly right. That's like you're either going to see it or you're not, right? How do I show just a particular button or an item? Or that's an interesting idea.
Okay, so cool. So I'm going to go ahead and I went through that so fast. I'm so sorry about doing that. It's just, I am just rude. Just rude.
It's coffee. It's all the coffee.
When you're having fun, and I like to have fun.
Time flies, and so does Alpha.
Let's see. Actually, let me go ahead and do this here. I think I have to delete this, add a new one. Okay. Is on the home page. That's why. You'll notice down here a couple things. One is you can show these optional. So if you're not going to be using preview in here, you can get rid of some of this stuff. So it creates a very simplistic structure depending on what you're doing there, but I'm going to leave them alone. But you'll notice there's a button down here called Load Sample Viewbox. By the way, this button is very powerful because it has enormous amount of information behind the scenes on viewboxes. And trust me, viewboxes are going to become one of your most potent weapons in your development arsenal going further. I mean, it's really cool what's going on there. So I'm going to go here to Load Sample Viewbox. And you can see we have a ton of sample viewbox, and they're very handy when you're kind of teaching yourself the ins and outs of how to use viewbox. I'm going to click a very simple one, which is a list of states. And what it will do is it already added some static JSON. It already added that field that came from there, added a new item called a row item, which is a special item there. And then, you know, set a few things up like the viewbox layout, did all that for you. So now we can go in there and you'll see we have a pre-built where I can click on them, and it's mimicking a list control is basically what it's doing. But you have a lot more control. It's much lighter weight than a list control because it doesn't have to do all the editing and other stuff like that. It's pretty handy there. Okay, so let's go in and explore this a little bit. So as we said, at the very top level, you have security groups to show and hide the totality of this control. Meaning if you don't want anybody to be able to see that list of states, you know, you just stay at that level, you'll do it from there, you stay there. But I'm gonna go to fields here, and this one's a little different there. Let's go, I'm trying to think if there is, I don't have it enabled here. This is where I think there's really not a lot of built-in functionality here, but there is a powerful capability, which is, let me go ahead and go in here, JavaScript functions. So I'll show, I'm first method. Okay. Okay, so how I would approach this if I want to do things, logged in user, login. I'm just seeing if there's any other things here. Okay. One thing you can do is on this, I can put hidden controls. So I'm going to put a container. Okay, and then I'm going to put a couple, and I'll see if there's a more elegant way to put this, but I think role. Okay. And I'm going to put in there the role is admin. Okay. So when I'm in my view box here, first what I can do is when I load up this UX in the server side events, which is this is called the server side events for people who are newer. It's basically a set of states that the UX goes through. So like when it launches and comes up, it does an on dialog initialize. So in here, I can say, e.control.roles is equal to context.security.get roles. And I just happen to know that that's a built-in function. And basically it grabs the current roles of the user. And I think you need to actually put in user ID. So you get the current user ID. And then that just gives you a comma delimited list, or I think it's character return line feed, basically the roles the person are. So I'm going to put that information.
There's also there's a function to also get the user ID as well. So if you're looking for the document,
user ID,
search on context security, you'll find a lot of good stuff in there. Yeah.
And go to the right one, otherwise you'll get yelled at. I think it's current user. I think that's the one, current user, but don't quote me on it. But basically I can get the current user ID, grab the roles, and then stick it in a hidden field right here, or multiple fields. Now that that information is here in my view box, when I have different fields and things like that, what I can do is, in items and stuff like that, I can, or actually where it is, let me see, where would I put that? I'm sorry, I'm a little rough on this, but I'm not doing there. I can refer to that role information. So let's say view box layout. So let's add an item. We'll call it test item. Okay. And selectable, no. I thought we had the ability to do show hide on items, but I think what you need to do is in the layout, you can insert commands in here to actually show or hide something based upon another item there. I may have to circle back on this, guys. I thought there's definitely a technique where you can look at that role information and then inside here, show and hide items. So you can go that fine level of granularity in a view box to be able to show that. let me go to Genie and see this here. Let's add an item. Let's see if in the Genie it gives me, there we are. That's what I was looking for. Okay, this is called the freeform layout, where you can go in and you can, depending on your data source, and I'm going to swap it out real quick. I'm going to put in some sample data so I have something like something better. When you're looking at the view box layout, there's two ways to lay out your view box. And I'll show you the first one, which is Genie. So you'll see we have name. So let's go to fields, view box layout. So I can go in here and much like a UX builder, I can put in first name, last name. So I'll put in those 4 fields. So it puts them in there. So it's almost like a baby UX builder. And now when I go and do a working preview, what it's going to do is instead of those lists of state names, I changed it. Basically it throws out, and you notice you have to do a little formatting. It's just kind of spitting them out one after another from that standpoint. Now, alternatively, when you're in here, and I'll come back to that, if I go to freeform editor, you can use your own, HTML skills to lay it out. And over time, you'll probably use this a lot because you can copy and paste stuff in there. Oops, I got rid of that, but no there. So now I can go in, do my freeform stuff, and I'll start to, make it look exactly what you want to do. So you notice it's spitting each one out one after another. But I want to go back in and show you if you're in the Genie mode, let's go ahead and look at this. You'll notice I have a show hide expression. So I can go to the state and I'll say, I can go in here, and this is JavaScript. So I can actually insert any kind of JavaScript in here to decide. So what it does is when it goes to render each one of these things, it runs this little JavaScript that must go to true false. And if it's true, it shows it. If it's false, it doesn't. So let me just go ahead and put in here. And let's say, do we have to say return? I think we just put in here. So I can say insert field. Oh, that one. I'll just say true. Let's choose true. And that will put out or false. But in here, you can put in JavaScript to evaluate other things. You're not limited. You could look at other fields in this record. Notice you can also reference external. So notice I can get bar dialog get value text box 1 or role, and then based on that, say if that is equal to it. So this shows you how to refer to outside. So the trick to this is that you can't really reference directly to the security system like you can on a UX and other things like that. What you can do is put that information that you want to use for this show hide into a hidden field. It'll be on the UX, and then in here, you can then reference that data to create it. So it's a little bit more complicated. It's more of a two-step situation, but it does work. So let's go ahead and just put in something real quick. I'm going to say A equal to B. And that's always going to be like a false. And remember, this is JavaScript syntax, so equal says is it the same thing kind of thing there. Now, notice when I do that and I go to the freeform editor, notice what it did here. Okay, so the way to learn this is use Genie, but you'll notice I surrounded my field I want to show or hide with that expression right here. So it basically just put in this star if, and that's called a, it's like insert.
A directive, yeah.
Yeah, isn't it? Well, there's formatting directive. No. It's command. There you go.
Right.
And again, I know for new people, you're like, oh God, bear with it. Yeah, it seems very convoluted and gobbledygook, and I'm sorry it's not the most efficient presentation. But the thing to realize is that you can do amazing things inside of it. So I can literally have a if expression in here that for everyone that spits out, it's going to look at this. And this could be looking at like my external role here. And it says, basically the way this works is it says, evaluate this expression. And then it has an if and an end if. If this is true, then spit out state. If this is false, then don't spit out everything between the beginning and end if stuff. And we've used it on other projects. You could also do things which is really cool. Actually here, insert command, you can do if then else's. So you can say if this, show this, if not there. So it's very super flexible on how that works there. So let's leave that and see. Let's see what if that works there. So I'm going to go BR, BR, and BR. Now in this case, we should not see any states when it runs. And so in a moment, okay, John Smith, Boston, no state. Let's go back in here, modify this, and I'll say if A equals A, so we know it's going to evaluate to true in working preview. And Boston, Mass, New York, New York. So that notice it's just showing and hiding that area. So the real trick here is you got to get the information into something this JavaScript can access, and then inside here you can reference that. So I think if you go, I'm going to actually just go crazy and see .object .get value role equals admin. Okay, so basically what I'm doing, I'm saying get the value of that hidden role. I actually have a mistake here. And if it's equal to admin, then go ahead and do it. So let's see what it does here. Okay, default. So notice John Smith, Boston, because, oh, it does say admin. I wonder why that didn't work. Wait, did it show? No, it doesn't show Mass. So if dialog object get value equals, yeah, I'd have to play with this more. You know, basically, oh wait, actually, I have to probably look at I might have a nomenclature wrong on this, how it's supposed to be set up. But this is your direction. And the neat thing is once you kind of got the basic, then you can do anything you want to make this very sophisticated based on the person's role. You can hide and show links, you can hide and show pieces, you can change color, you can add values in. It's a lot of fun from that standpoint here. The tricky part was just when you load up this when you load up you have to get the user, get their roles, put that into a control that can be referenced by JavaScript, and then you can say like if that control contains this value, then show it from there. Again, not as convenient as just going down here and clicking the show hide expression, or I'm sorry, the where is it? It's security groups right here. I don't have any available, but it would show me what security groups you can say. A little flexible there. Now, if you're in the list control, the other thing on that is, I believe, let's see if it does. We have show hide. Might have to use, oh yeah, security groups. So if you're, you may want to look at a list control. I like view boxes because they're very light and very fast. But remember, with a view box or with a list control, you can still use the free-form layout, so it kind of acts like a view box. A view box really is just like a stripped-down version of a list control. The list control has all these other things. So again, the list is a little heavier, but it will render really quickly, and person won't necessarily see it. But this may give you that opportunity to say, go free-form, laid out free-form, and then the fields. You can go down here and use the security groups to say show or hide for instance, my static image button, things like that. So again, I applaud you for using a view box. That is a great control. We're going to be exploring that a lot more. It's fast, lightweight, but if you're doing security stuff, maybe you want to look at a list control with a free form, and you can kind of achieve the same result, but with having Alpha do a little bit more of the heavy lifting, and you don't have to do the JavaScript and stuff like that. So long-winded. Thank you for letting me kind of stumble my way through this forest of ignorance.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Ian. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, back to a question on the two-state button again. And this is one actually I thought of. I forgot to ask you, but someone else did. And that is, how do you know what state that button is in? For example, you might want to say, okay, well, if it's in the off state when I click it, I want to, I don't know, send an API call that says turn something on, and vice versa. So how do you, in this two-state buttons, know what you've got there?
Okay, so again, what you want to be able to do is when you're on a two-state button, the on-click event, you want to be able to look at another
know what state that button is in. Right?
Okay.
So like, for example, maybe you had it so that it was the circle was empty and doesn't have the line in, indicating that it's off. I want to run my off script or my on script. Yeah.
Okay. So a couple different ways you can handle that. If one way is to have, well, see, that's going to be on. We want it on a row by row basis. So I think the way to do is this: when you're on here, I think you can inspect the current status. I wonder if, golly, that's a really good question. Because what you want to be able to do is one of two things. You want to like check the status of what I am and then switch it to something else. I mean, it's going to automatically do the visual part, but behind the scenes. One thing you could do is if you have another field in here, you could use that to track it. You don't have to show that to the user. So let me go to my data source here. Oh, I don't want to modify that's too there. But if you had another field, when the person clicks on the on-click button, let's go to here. In this here, you can get and set the value of other columns in that row. So you could use a hidden column to track kind of the current on, off, yes, no, etc. And therefore, then you would, write a little piece of code that says, look at that hidden field. If it's this value, then do this.
So that doesn't have, let's say it's based off a SQL data source. Does that SQL data source need to have that field in it already?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, that's the tricky part. If it's a view. Yeah, that's sort of like
we've run into that question. Let's look into that and come up with an answer. So,
because I'm looking in here. We have
I mean,
things like a custom control, but a custom control.
Yeah, what row it's on, and you could set maybe an array, which says, row whatever the state is off.
Yeah. Yeah, and you may have to just store it in JavaScript, kind of. You're right, in a window information there. Again, if you have another hidden field from your SQL, then you can just be setting that behind the scenes, which, and then click, because if this is truly editable, once they click that, you can do two things. You can set the value of that field, and then also tell the list control to instantiate that and sync that up to the server. So that can all be automatic. You just use the built-in capabilities. But I'm wondering, yeah, you almost like want a scratch pad column to track the state of that information there. So,
right. All right, we will look into that.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
Excellent.
By the way, if I read this real quick right here,
Yeah.
if you'll notice when I click the on-click event,
Mhm.
it's got some instruction. Basically, it says you can reference the row number. This is the row that's been selected.
Yeah.
And therefore, this tells you, like, I can get, like, to read the data from the field in the current row, use, for instance, data.fieldName. So if you had that data.hiddenState, you would say data.hiddenState is equal to this. So there's really easy ways for you to read the other values, so you know what, like if it's off and you want to go to on, you may want to execute one action JavaScript. If it's on and want to go off, you may want to execute another action JavaScript. You could look at another hidden field and then say, okay, I'm going to take this behavior from here. So good questions.
Another one we've got here. This is oh good. I'm going to ask you a tricky one because I like asking you tricky ones. All right. So this person, same PC. We've talked about running multiple versions of Alpha Anywhere, more or less simultaneously, or at least having them installed simultaneously. This person, though, is interested in running 2 copies of the Alpha Anywhere application server, not the IIS one, the standard one, at the same time on the same PC, but with different version numbers. So maybe they're going to use the pre-release they want to run, and they also want to run another one. And they said when they try it, it seems to get into some issues when they're both running at the same time. Do you have any guidance or anything on like that?
Oh, man, I wouldn't really recommend it.
Okay.
To be honest, because part of it is memory. I mean, I've noticed how it handles memory, like objects in memory and stuff like that. So I think there's a way to do it, but I have not personally done it. I would say Alpha Cloud makes that just child's play, because you can just spin up a new server.
Well, Alpha Cloud, right? You could just do another deployment, or if you're working with virtual machines, you could do it that way.
Okay, so the way to approach it, if you want to give it a try, is you basically you pick the installation. So in here we can say, okay, what's available? Application server. I can go more options, and I can put in where I want to put this application server. So I can tell where I've installed these files on my server. So I do that twice for each version. So now I have an Alpha App Server in both. Now, when you're using the Alpha Application Server, let's see if I have it running here. I think I've got all this. Now, let's go ahead and just launch it. I think I've got it on here. Okay, this is probably, it may bark because of 80, but when it's running, you'll see down here, I can go in the icon tray and I can say configure server. Okay, so this, let me get rid of other stuff on the page, is how you configure this server. So you can see, you go in, you set all your stuff, you can set the port because you want them on different ports. Right. You can put in logging, etc. from there. Now, the important thing is what you're doing when you're here is you're actually editing in what's called an XML file that has all this data. So let's see where I actually go find that. That's trace. Okay. No, that's MIME types. Where do I find that? There is, it actually shows me.
While you're doing that, we actually have three answers from the audience. Each one is
good. Hey, they're better than me.
Yeah, I do that all the time. Just make sure you're on a different port. You should be fine.
Okay, cool. But when you launch them, you would set up 2 icons on the desktop that would point to the different ones to open them, and from there. But I'm trying to find out where is. I apologize. I want to find out, because this is all saved into a configuration file, which is kind of handy to know where that's at. So let's see where it is. Where is it? This is, right here. Open configuration folder in Explorer. So you'll notice that XML file is all your data. And if
Look
you
at that.
tell the so you can write
Yeah.
a little shortcut that says, start this version of alpha with this XML, and therefore then it loads in the things like
Oh,
any
like a
configuration issues.
gotcha, like a command line thing that does that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so like
Yep.
when you're using always up and you're going to use always up, you can create one always up that launches one version with an XML file here, and
Yeah.
then another one with an XML file there. But you have to be a little careful, and it's doable, but
Yeah.
beware. But I'm glad to
Cool.
hear that there's confirmation that people can do that, because
It can be
we like
done.
people being able to do what they
Yeah.
want to do within
Yeah.
legal limits. Don't get any ideas. Yeah, I know it's
You're the
crap.
one who just came back from spring break, so I don't.
I know exactly.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Florida was great. I
Yeah. Yeah.
made bond very quickly. Was
Yeah.
able to get out of there pretty quickly.
Fantastic. The other thing, though, by the way, not just different ports, but different web routes. Someone else pointed out. Of course, you would be stepping
Yes,
on each other's toes if you don't have a different web route for each one. So by default,
right
we go
there.
to C:\A5 web route, but you'd want to change that. So it was different between the two versions.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, this is a good one. Just saw Python support. What's that?
What that?
What that exactly? I want to see
I
what's that.
know. Let's see. Is it in the
It's
pre-release
pretty
notes?
exciting, isn't it?
I've been pushing
You,
for it.
you mess around with Python, if I recall.
Oh,
Is
I
that
love it.
you're a
It's
Python
really
person? Yeah.
yeah. Let's see. That's not here. Is it? Where are they seeing that? Is that?
Well, okay. When you were installing the Alpha Anywhere
Oh,
installer, it said, "Hey,"
oh yeah. Install that. Yeah.
during the
So
installation. Hmm.
part of the roadmap right now, when you're doing anything, you call an Xbasic function, like when you do a callback or anything, because Xbasic is the language Alpha uses. And actually, behind the scenes, Alpha generates an enormous amount of Xbasic stuff that it uses. So it's kind of like it's eating its own dog food. It's using all that stuff here.
Uh-huh.
Now, the issue is, and we've seen, is that more and more both Node and Python are becoming sort of the de facto back office languages. There's things like PHP and stuff, but if we put up a graph of, let's say we'll go a web back end language chart, you're going to see that the dominant ones right now are Python and Java, which is Node.
Uh-huh.
You can see, and all these other ones are slowly going away, or they're kind of hanging in there kind of thing.
And
But they're,
JavaScript, which is Node, right? Not Java.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct.
So it's the
Actually,
third.
actually I take that back. This is a better
Okay.
indicator. You can see JavaScript is the number one because of Node.js
Uh-huh.
and just in general.
And
Then
because people
Python's
learned
number
it
two.
client side, and then they didn't have to relearn it quite as much from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But then
And
you can see
Python is
other ones
next.
still heavy PHP, but they're
Yeah.
going down. So the
Yeah.
reality is right now we already have the ability to call node functions, but you have to wrap it with Xbasic. So the first call is to Xbasic, who says, oh, okay. And then it takes that information and it calls node, which is basically another server running on your app. And it's already pre-built in and loaded by Alpha. So it's already there. In fact, we use it from other stuff. It does its thing in there, but you have to go through these steps of, setting it up, wrapping it, and doing those other things here. What the team is working on and part of the roadmap is that you can call that directly from your user interface, and you have to go through that Xbasic level. Now, the really neat thing that loads up is that there are hundreds of thousands of modules that are available for both those languages that do things. Like if I go in and look at something like, let's go SendGrid, API dev, or Node. Okay. Things like SendGrid has a whole Node.js or Python libraries that make it super easy for you. You don't have to write at a low level. You can just basically do things at a higher level. But there are just enormous amount of these modules because they're a very popular language. So the benefit will be you'll now be able to take something that maybe is not part of our current, SendGrid's already built in, but you have some, like maybe you're doing data science work or something like that. You'll be able to use pandas and other things like that from data science in Python and be able to use Alpha to create these beautiful user interfaces with powerful interaction features, but not have to rewrite everything in Xbasic to get it to work. You can say, I'm going to pump out to Python. It does it. It's a very tricky, challenging problem, but the team has really got a good handle on it. And it's going to be super powerful because it's going to unlock an enormous amount of sort of community power that you can use within it, make it easy for you to integrate to other systems without having to write a bunch of code. And it's going to be very simple. So the team is really working on they can do it, but how do you do it so it's easy when you're building a UX? How do you call that function? How do you get the data back? How do you debug it? Things like that. So the cool thing is the underlying capability is in the tool. They're just working on exposing it from there, and it's going to be super fun and it's really going to be powerful.
Terrific. Someone made a comment here, which I thought was interesting, and that is that they've got the community edition, but what they kind of miss is the ability to sort of mess around with tables, which you got in the desktop version.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that was pretty cool. You could actually, for example, export stuff and end up creating tables and stuff like that. So we are actually looking at adding more database functionality and the ability to manipulate and look at data and stuff. I mean, we do have the database explorer, but some
we
of
have
the other
SQLite
features are pretty
databases
cool.
that can generate.
And we got SQLite. Yeah, we've got that one as well. So
yeah, I mean, that was kind of
if you're missing features though in CE that you thought, you know what, this would be a great version for the community edition version, but you've left it around a desktop, you go ahead and send us a request. We might, there might be some things that it might make sense to add back in,
And please, if you have a lottery ticket that is actually won, include that with it.
Yeah,
and
please.
You'd be amazed the kind of response time you get with valid lottery tickets. It's just something about it. It's just, everybody gets excited.
Excellent. Okay, so let's see what else we've got. Yeah, some people have said that, a bunch of Python fans here. This is terrific.
Yeah, it's just,
it's a very
approachable language.
Session perhaps on writing some of those into our web applications. Might be a nice.
Yeah, well, I got to kind of wait till we get those integrations, but
fair enough. I know one thing
I've
at a
kind of
time.
hacked it for now. One thing that's cool about Python is there's like a billion like Python programmers out there. And a lot of people who are really good in data science. So if you're doing something special, you don't have to go find an Xbasic person, which there are phenomenal ones, but it's just a limited pool just because of the nature of it. It'll just open up the ability to leverage yourself up a little bit and reuse some of these modules and other things like that. But it's a very approachable language. It's very much like Xbasic. Going from Xbasic to Python, very, very easy transition between the two. I mean, I picked up Python and started running with it. And it's one of those things that's interpreted like Xbasic. So you can literally put in print statements and learn step by step.
And you can work with it interactively too, which is kind of nice and a lot of ways. You could say, I'm going to put together this complicated function. Is it going to give me back what I think it's going to do? And you go, yeah, I nailed it. Great. I'll copy and paste that, put that in my code. Super much like Xbasic lets you do. Yeah.
We're excited.
Cool. Let's see what else we've got here. I think. Okay, someone was asking, can you talk about the TestFlight application that's available in the Apple App Store and how it can be used with applications developed in Alpha? And I don't know if you've used that before, but I know one of our programmers here, Chris Martin, has used that quite a bit. And maybe you could give us a little bit of a demo in an upcoming webinar, because it's kind of cool. Also pretty cool is that we do have a new release of Alpha launch, which is in the store. Not a ton of new features, but it's now up to date with all the things that needed to be kept up to date to keep it in the store, like they use the proper use of the web view and things like that. So it's I'd like to do another session on that one as well, because that's actually a really neat technology that allows you to build native like apps that hang out on your phone, but without having to submit them even to the Apple App Store or to Google Play. You can just get them running right off the bat. So let's see. I think that we're looking pretty good here for questions. Though, if I miss, there was one person who actually asked a question early on, which had to do with linking lists together in a parent-child relationship. We didn't get time to get to that today, but we will take a look at that for our next webinar. And that reminds me that if you do have any questions, go ahead and send them to guides, GUIDES at alphasoftware.com. You don't have to wait for a webinar to get your question answered.
I know, and wait through my annoying jabber jabbering, get to the point.
Well, they
Come on.
must like it. People come back every week, so I don't know. Maybe
I
they're
know
gluttons.
they must be gluttons for punishment. Well, thank you,
Well, with
Dave.
that, Dion, and Sarah, for that matter, thank you very
Oh
much for
God, yeah.
joining us today, and thanks everyone who showed up. Hope to see you at our next Wednesday webinar.
It's gonna be
Take
so
care.
cool. I gotta tell you,
Gonna
it's
be
gonna be
great.
so cool.
Awesome. Take care and stay well. Bye bye.
Thank you.